You know, when an advertiser controls your economy, it's almost like family, you know. In a family, the son who earns is the son who's more loved, or at least more respected. The son who's not earning is not as much respected. Though at the end of the day, the mother is a socialist. It gives them equal food. But decision making is more with the son who earns, who contributes to family's economy. This, if you transplant this experience of your life, which comes from society, into the newspaper world, you would see that the media that is giving, that is reliant on high-end advertisements. No, they are high-end advertisements. There is advertisement for Pan Bihar, for chai, for soap, Lifebuoy, all that. These are not high-end advertisements. What is a high-end advertisement? I have a company that manufactures Mercedes, BMW, Nissan, some of the top-level cars. I have a company that manufactures some of the best televisions, electronic gadgets. So I want to know, when I give you the advertisement, what is the socio-economic profile of your readership constituency? And that socio-economic profile of the readership constituency I use to decide whether or not you as a newspaper qualify to advertise my high-end product through a high-end advertisement. Now, I want high-end advertisements. I want big-ticket advertisements, because I have to foster my revenue and my profits in the name of economic sustainability. And if I'm not economically viable, then I won't survive as a newspaper. I would die. So the argument that generally given is, even when advertisements are intruding on news space and news is being mauled to suit the advertiser, that if we are not economically viable, then what purpose the journalism? I mean, we won't be able to do journalism. So let's do a guerrilla warfare with the big advertiser. But that they just say that we do guerrilla warfare. Actually, they are sitting ducks. Now, the advertiser says, show us that economic profile, socio-economic profile of your reader, and I'll give you the advertisement. And to build that socio-economic profile, we do the worst of discrimination when it comes to our readership constituency. For instance, I'll give you an example. Any prominent big-ticket newspaper in Delhi, if there is a murder in South Delhi, which is a Tony area, which is area where these affluent people live. So if there is a murder in South Delhi, it will be on page 1. But if there is a murder in East Delhi, which is down market, it will be on page 3. It will be buried inside. We put price tag on death. That's what we do. In order to build a socio-economic profile, which will be alluring, enticing big advertisers to propagate their product in our newspapers. And if this paradigm, which has become the norm, is extended, then what do you have? Between two elections, people who occupy the news space or the airwaves are people who don't require MLAs and MPs for redressal of their grievances. They are otherwise well off. They are the people actually who are manipulating the system. And these are the people who between two elections are also manipulating public discourse. And that manipulated public discourse is finding expression on television channels, in the moving picture, and also in cold print. Yes, the journalism in Malayalam, in Kerala, in relative terms, is much more rooted than the kind of journalism that is practiced in big cities, in metropolitan India, in cosmopolitan India. You are more rooted. Why are they more rooted? No, not out of choice. First of all, they are one amongst you. That's the reason. And second, you are a demanding audience. You don't take any balderdash from them. And if they commit a mistake, you make them conscious of that. You made that mistake. And I don't understand Malayalam, but I saw Mr. Thomas Jacob explaining how they missed out one person who was once a topper from the Kerala state. That is what you are achieving. That here is the topmost man from the topmost newspaper in your state. He finds himself compelled, obligated to explain to you that we made a mistake. And that, I think, sets up a great relationship between a newspaper and its readership. And why is this relationship great? I think long years ago when I used to work for Manorama, I remember there was this great Gulf crisis. And I saw our Delhi office almost becoming a post office, giving messages from people who are there to their families, taking messages from their families to the people who were stranded there. And that was my first introduction to interactive journalism, on which so much of emphasis is today laid. Yes, again, newspapers in Kerala are an exception to the rule when it comes to spending money on information gathering. Most newspapers, they spend just a fraction of their revenue on news gathering. I remember Panorama hired a plane when the Pope was in India to be able to be on time wherever the Pope went. Those were difficult days. You didn't get flights and you didn't get booking on flights. And they spent that kind of money on chartering a plane to be able to keep track of where the Pope went. Now, that apart, this may not last because Kerala's economy is a rich economy. It's flush with funds. And big advertiser, if he hasn't yet arrived there, he will arrive. And he will pose a major problem for higher editorial management to decide what to do and what not to do. And in that tussle, the marketing will win. Their strike rate would be higher than that of the editorial side. But let's keep that aside. I was on this subject of people who were not influential, not finding a voice between two elections. It took this country long number of years to get to know that farmers were committing suicide because they were under so much of debt. We woke up to this idea, to this spectre, only when the agriculture minister got up in parliament and said that 140,000 farmers have committed suicide over a period of time. It took the government to shock us. We did not get to know it ourselves. Why? Because a farmer's death isn't of any interest to a person who can afford an Audi car or a Mercedes or a BMW. This whole elitist approach in the media is slowly creeping into the system. And a manifestation of that is the emphasis on cinema, crime and cricket. Corruption now added, thanks to the inventiveness of the political class, that corruption is now a major issue, and that's, I think, a good part of journalism, that we are focusing permanently on that. Now, some years back, I think a couple of years back, the Vice President of India was participating in a seminar organized by the Rajya Sabha Secretariat. I also happened to be invited. The other people on the stage were Harish Khare, then with the Hindu, and I think Mrinal Pandey, who is the chairman of the Prasar Bharati. And the Vice President made a very, very telling comment. The Vice President is a learned man, very erudite. He is a diplomat's diplomat. And he said that of the 4 pillars of the Indian state, or the state, the only pillar that profiteers is the media. It self-confessedly profiteers. And because it is the only pillar that profiteers, a greater responsibility devolves on this pillar to be very careful in what it does. And I think that today we, in the business of this publishing and in the business of television coverage, have to understand this advice of the Vice President in the context of the kind of business models that we are pursuing. Mr. Ratan Tata, in an affidavit, and Gopi perhaps would know, in the 2G scam, in an affidavit that hasn't yet found the light of the day, he mentioned that while much of what was written against me in the scam was done in the name of press freedom, the media houses that were really gunning for me, I mean, my business rivals in this telecom sector had stakes in the media houses that were gunning for me. Now, how do we resolve this contradiction? That when Mr. Ratan Tata was being rightly nailed or wrongly nailed in the 2G scam, was he being nailed in pursuit of honest journalism, or was he being nailed in pursuit of inspired journalism, inspired by the capital, which came to the company that publishes that journal or newspaper? Chomsky once said, and I broadly paraphrase him, that in any society where capital is in the process of gaining influence or has gained influence, the tendency of the capital is to get decisions taken outside the periphery of institutions linked to the people.